Hello and welcome back to another KCC video. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're gonna jump into some malicious compliance, but before we start that, I'd like to give away another KCC t-shirt. So here's your chance. Comment down below and let me know where you're watching from. Doesn't have to be narrowed down to the city, but state, province, country, whatever. If we hit 1,000 likes on this video, one of those comments will be chosen and you'll get a KCC t-shirt. And back to the video, our first story today comes to us from Fascist Unicorn. If I don't get help, you don't get help either. Let's jump right in. Many years ago, I worked at a large movie theater at a mall as an assistant manager. We were always busy and had full staffing levels on the weekends, but to make up for the payroll costs, off-peak days and hours were staffed extremely low. One staff member per area usually. We always received our inventory shipments on a weekday and in the morning or early afternoon, but they were always such large shipments that my general manager, a sensible fellow, would usually have an extra staff member or two scheduled to help put the massive amounts of candy, popcorn bags and tubs, drink cups, 35-pound bags of popcorn kernels, cleaning supplies, and whatnot away. Even with help, this could take a few hours. There would always be at least 4 or 5 massive pallets delivered. Well, on one usual inventory day, there was a slight problem. The week before, my GM went on vacation, and the assistant GM, a total butthole, made the schedule. Ever the stingy jerk, he decided it was not worth a few extra payroll hours to schedule any extra people on that day to help out with the shipment. Furthermore, on that day, he had scheduled himself and I as the two managers on duty during that shift, and since he was above such petty things as actually doing any work at all, other than sitting in the office reading sports scores on the computer, it was up to me to get the entire order put away, cover breaks for each lone staff member, working in box, concession, usher, and deal with any customer complaints and issues should any arise. I was, well, still am, a very small, lightweight female, lifting a couple thousand pounds of boxes and bags in a short time period, while also tasked with the aforementioned responsibilities, completely solo, just didn't seem logical to me. So I made my way back to the office where Assistant General Jerkface McCrapwad was reading golf scores or something. I said, hey, I could really use some help putting the order away. I can't get all this done before the end of my shift. The butthole scoffed, gives me a sarcastic butt smile, and goes, I think you can handle it by yourself. I say, well, I would really appreciate you covering the breaks for the staff while I work on this then. I really can't do all of this by myself before the end of the shift. Again, the butthole gives me that crap-eating grin and goes, well, if I were working alone, I know I would be able to do it all by myself, so you should be able to as well. Figure it out. Fine, F you. So I go back out there and just start hauling butt to get things put away. In fact, I am furious, and when I am furious, I can be a little careless. I'm about halfway through the initial third of the quarter of the 10th of the first large pallet of BS I am tasked with handling Sign Auxilio when I realize something that infuriated me even more. Butthole Assistant GM was supposed to be the person who prepped the area we stored candy in the day before. What this meant in theory is that the person responsible for that goes into the candy storage area, rotates all the stock from the last week to the front left side of the shelves, so we can stock the new stuff towards the back right, so we don't overlook a case of cookie dough bites, and then it goes bad and murders all our customers, and we get sued, or something like that. Anyway, since the butthole did not do this, I now not only have to put this crap away myself, I am now responsible for rotating the existing boxes on the shelves in a neat stack on the left before I can even think about unloading this pile of overpriced diabetes chow. So now I'm just a whirlwind of candy shuffling fury. As fast and carelessly as possible, I am just punching boxes into their rightful positions without any regard to their delicate innards. I don't know if M&Ms can bruise, but some of them probably did that day. My rage was actually helping me out quite a bit until I got to the Twizzlers. For you lucky souls that have never stocked boxes of bulk candy before, most of them are reasonably sized at about 5 to 10 pounds a box. So while there are a lot of them, they are reasonably manageable. This is not the case with Twizzlers. Our Twizzler packages were full size, and there were about 60 of them in a box. Crap, I could easily move into one of these boxes and have a friend of similar proportions over for company. Twizzlers are also the preferred overpriced movie snack for recently divorced middle-aged white women on their first jump in back into the dating pool for some reason. So suffice it to say, we sold a lot of them. I've got about 6 of these boxes already on the shelf, all the way to the right, with another 6 I need to unload, and none of them are where they should be. So this is where I lost it completely. I shove my arm in to grab the first of the massive box of twisty sugar ropes that is on the right side that needs to be on the left side, and quickly and completely rip open and off a good-sized chunk of my arm near the elbow on the metal shelf bracket. Well, I was told before that bleeding profusely on the boxes was generally frowned upon, so I make my way back to the office to interrupt Butthole McGolf scores and show him my ouchie arm. Despite his failings in literally every other area in his life, he does realize that workplace injuries should be taken seriously because potential lawsuits and money and liability and whatnot, and immediately located a clinic that we had some sort of professional dealings with that would check out my arm and give me a tetanus shot and all that jazz at no cost to myself. I was pretty hysterical at this point, although not, as he thought, over my injury, and he assumed I was upset about having to lose hours. I was hourly, you see, and assured me that I would receive pay for the full day of work. So I got to go to the clinic, get patched up and my tetanus shot, and be home about 3 hours prior to the end of my shift, while I had the knowledge that the butthole now had to go rotate the stock, get the order put away, cover breaks, and handle people complaining that Saw 3 wasn't the intellectual cinematic masterpiece that they thought it would be. And could they pretty please get their money back, even though they watched the whole thing, please? It was just really gory, and they weren't expecting that, okay? What's the number for corporate then? Well, I got to sit at home, receiving full pay for the rest of that day. Worth the scar, in my opinion. Well, I don't know if it was worth the scar in the end, honestly, because I probably would have just done things at my own pace. And then at the end of the day, well, my shift's over, so I guess you'll have to pick up the slack there. Thanks. Bye-bye now. Then you just put that place in the rearview mirror, go home, don't think about it, and come back in for the next shift. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Can't Stand Ya. Mr. Very Important doesn't want any AC on him in the middle of the summer. Let's jump right in. I work in building operations for some high-rise office buildings in sunny Southern California. I maintain electrical systems, plumbing, HVAC, basically anything within the building I fix. My background is HVAC with plenty of certifications and experience in how things work. The building I'm currently at has covers on the thermostats to prevent tenants from messing with them. Side note, our HVAC system is a pneumatic system that uses air pressure to operate everything. You need a specialty gauge to check what the pneumatic signal is calling for, heating, cooling, or nothing. This is why we don't let tenants adjust their own T-stats, because without the gauge, you're only guessing what you're doing. Anyways, Mr. Very Important puts in a call he is way too cold. No problem. I go up and find his thermostat has had the cover pried off and set to 68 degrees and then half put back on. I check my gauge and it's operating properly for being set at 68. I adjust it back up to 72, which is standard temperature, and let Mr. Very Important know someone had messed with the thermostat and that's why he was so cold. Halfway through telling him, he cuts me off and says, "I don't care about the thermostat. I want these vents shut down. I don't want to feel any air." I try to explain it will be a lot more comfortable in a few minutes, and shutting the vents is not a good idea in the summer. Well, Mr. Very Important isn't having it. After all, he's very important and knows better than me how comfort cooling works, despite my decade plus of experience. And to top it off, he's an absolute C about the whole thing. After being cut off for the third time, I finally had enough and say, "Okay, no problem. You want the vents completely shut?" And he responds, "Yes, if I feel any air blow on me, we're going to have issues that your boss will have to sort out." So I shut the vents completely at the damper at the AC box. No air will come out. Well, I've dealt with very important people before, and I know what to expect. So I put a note on the work order. Mr. Very Important asked for no air to come out of the vents in his office, despite my objections. So vents have been shut per tenant request. If you're aware, the West Coast is going through a gnarly heat wave right now, so naturally, Mr. Very Important puts in a call, "Office is too hot." I accept the call, but I go on my way doing my normal duties, which I'm very busy with, as we just had one of 4 people on our team leave. So it takes me 3 days to get back to Mr. Very Important's office, and he's losing his crap at how hot it is. And to be fair, his office was like a sauna. I'd be pissed too if I had to work in that office. I ask if he wants his vents open back up to allow the air to flow into his office and cool it down. Dude looks like I just kicked his dog when he realizes closing his vents was his demand that I tried to talk him out of. I open them up real quick because it's very easy and I leave. Apparently, he didn't like being called out like that and called my property managers to complain. I'm not sure what they said back to him, but I certainly got a good laugh out of the whole thing. As was mentioned in the comment section down below, yeah, sorry sir, but you threatened to have me fired if you felt any airflow, and opening the vents to cool this down isn't worth my job. Have a nice day now, bye-bye. Wait, is that 2 stories in a row? Our next story today comes to us from Dmitry Nilovich. "Do not disturb me under any circumstances." Okay, you got it. Let's jump right in. This happened to me many years ago, but I just joined this group and thought it would be appropriate. I had just been hired as an administrative assistant at a large antiquarian store and auction house in a small city in New England. The owners, my bosses, were husband and wife team who I shall refer to as Hell Boss and She Boss. It was a small crew of employees, a couple of furniture movers, the person who did furniture restorations and clock repair, a woman who sold custom lampshades, and me. This was a time way back in the dark ages when a company had to pay through the nose for long-distance phone calls. She Boss had her desk in the middle of the sales floor where she could keep an eye on everything. She had a standing order that under no circumstances was I to take a message from someone calling out of state. I was to let her know that the out-of-state caller was on the phone so she would not have to call the person back and incur the long-distance charges. That made sense, was an understandable directive with which I complied. These 2 were difficult people to work for though. I never seemed to be able to please them. At one point, the company was holding the largest auction of antiquities they had ever done. The catalog was immense, and people were calling from all over the country to ask She Boss questions about specific items. When these calls came in, I immediately notified her and she always took their calls. Then, a very important, wealthy client came in and asked for a personal preview of the auction. She Boss said to me, "Under no circumstances am I to be disturbed while I'm with this client." She then disappeared with the client into the auction hall. It was coming on afternoon, which meant that the West Coast was just starting their day. During the roughly 2 hours that She Boss was with the client, I took something like 40 messages for her from the various places like LA, Seattle, San Francisco, Boulder, as well as New York City, DC, etc. My workplace was on the 2nd floor, where there was a balcony that ran around 2 sides, overlooking the very large sales floor. I generally kept my door to the balcony closed because the echoing volume of the sales floor made it hard to hear on the telephone. When She Boss finally came out of her meeting with the client, she saw the very thick stack of messages that were left on her desk. The unintelligible screech that resulted was damaging to my ears, and presumably those of everyone else in the building. I had no choice but to open my door and look out over the balcony down to the distorted, red-splotched face of She Boss as she proceeded to curse at me worse than I'd ever been chewed out before. She demanded to know why I had taken all of these messages from out-of-state callers and threatened to take the cost of returning the calls out of my paycheck. I replied, "You told me that you were not to be disturbed. It's not my fault that you can't remember what you've ordered people to do." Needless to say, I did not last very much longer at that job. I'm kinda disappointed that OP didn't work with both under no circumstances orders because they were told to not disturb her with the client, but they were also told that under no circumstances should they take any messages that would necessitate a long-distance callback. So I think you could have just gotten away with doing nothing there. I probably would have tried it that way anyway. Our last story today comes to us from Post-Anarchism. Customer says it is rude to interrupt. Let's jump right in. This happened to me years ago. A little background, I was working as Tier 2 customer support for a large financial credit card company that also issued prepaid and reloadable cards. A customer had called in, and because Tier 1 support could not provide the answers he wanted, they needed Tier 2 to try providing a resolution. When I answered the call, the customer came in already hot and explained to me how he was a doctor and this was a waste of his time, and we should bow down to his request. He wanted the option to deposit money through the ATM to his prepaid card. I started to explain that the only available option with the prepaid card was that he could only withdraw from the ATM and that there was not an option to make deposits through the ATM to the card. The customer was upset that I wasn't fixing his problem. I was still way too low on the corporate totem pole to make this type of a change to the product. He demanded that I tell the big bosses that these changes need to be made. Customer starts long rant, and in order to end the call as he was talking to the wrong people, I start to explain all the details of the card he signed up for and check the box for having read and agreed with the card services. I know we all do that without really reading them. He then yells at me that it is rude to interrupt someone as they are talking. It was a slow day at work, and rather than try arguing with someone so stubborn, in my most polite customer service voice, apologize and ask him to proceed. I muted my phone line and did not listen to anything more he said. He continued his long rant for another 5 to 10 minutes. He finally wears himself out and the line goes quiet. I waited another minute of silence before he asks if I was going to respond. I unmute my line and inform him I did not intend to interrupt him as he requested, then asked if it was my turn to respond. He confirmed I could talk now. Once again, I start to read over the card policies and how deposits through an ATM were not part of the program. He interrupts me, and I instantly threw his line back how it is impolite to interrupt someone as they are talking. He goes quiet for a moment. When I finish my spiel, he finally blows up. Luckily, policy states that once a customer starts to use profanity, I have all the rights to disconnect the call. I inform him if he continued using the language, the call would be ended, and he became even more irate. At this point, I interrupt him to say that the call will be terminated and to have a nice day, then promptly hung up on him. I believe the proper response to this one was, "Oh, yes sir, I'll get immediately on writing that piece of software and I'll upload it to every single ATM in the country so you can recharge your prepaid card. Get bent." Remember to comment down below with where you're watching from. For your chance to win a KCC t-shirt, make sure you drop a like on the video because we're not giving one away unless we hit 1,000 likes. Check out all 4 OPs at the links in the description down below. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.